Cosette, for that lovely introduction. And thank you to all 102 plus me, I'm 103, that made time in your busy weeks to join us here on a Wednesday at lunch for our lunch with EDNA. I really appreciate you making the time to be here. We have ed developers in the room. I see a lot of familiar names, and we also have instructors in the room from the various institutions across the province. So welcome to each and every one of you. Today's session is called Multiple Choice Questions for Applying, Analyzing, and Evaluating Student Learning. And as I was preparing the slides for this, I realized that there's something a little wrong with the title. It almost sounds like we as instructors are applying, analyzing, evaluating student learning. And that's not what it is. We're going to build questions, multiple choice questions, so that students are the ones that are applying, analyzing, and evaluating in the question of Bloom's taxonomy and the questions we ask them. So just a little grammatical note on the title, but that is our title of our session today. I'll begin with a land acknowledgement. I am joining you today from the University of Alberta, which is primarily located on the traditional territory of Cree, Blackfoot, Métis, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, and Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Anishinaabe nations, lands that are now known as part of Treaties 6, 7, and 8, and the homeland of the Métis. The University of Alberta respects the sovereignty, lands, histories, languages, knowledge systems, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit nations. So before we get going, here's a bit.ly. Oh, I hear that someone has unmuted. Sounding a little, here, that sounds a little bit better. Here's a bit.ly of the article that I have prepared for you. If you type that directly into your browser, it'll open up into a view-only version. So I'll go out of my slides, and you'll see it'll look like this. And I see some of you hopping in already. If you're not wanting to put that bit.ly in, let me get the view-only link. And I'll put it into the chat. So now it's in the chat there. You can jump on in to the document there. But again, this is, I'm going to come to this document a little later in the presentation. I'll give you the bit.ly a little bit later in the presentation, but this is that handout that I was talking about earlier. The outcomes for today, or what I hope are the outcomes for today, I hope by the end of this session, you feel comfortable explaining or putting into action, explaining what is the role of assessment in teaching and learning, the value of alternative or authentic assessments, and then the possibility of creating higher order multiple choice questions that are suitable to an open book context, which arguably are more authentic. And we're going to go through some examples and try to develop some tangible strategies for creating these kinds of questions in any discipline, whatever your discipline might be. So,
Anita, sorry to interrupt. Could you put the bit.ly in the chat just for a few more folks?
Yes.
They're requesting the bit.ly.
Oh, I didn't press enter. Oh, let me try that again. Everyone in the meeting.
It's like we got it. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you for your help with the tech side of this. Let's start here. Assessment matters. Assessment is an important part in the teaching and learning process. It is a way for students to engage meaningfully with the course content. Effective assessments, in theory, can provide good evidence of student achievement. Assessments can invoke positive and negative emotions. Negative emotions can be things like fear, dread, anxiety, and intimidation. And according to the literature, Assessment can also cause positive emotions such as confidence and optimism. So assessment does have a place in teaching and learning. Traditional assessments are those that are what you see in the picture here, quite often closed book, invigilated, in-person exams. They really do have deep roots in higher education. They largely consist of exams that have multiple choice questions. And there's benefits and drawbacks to these types of traditional assessments. Benefits or advantages can be things like a large number of concepts can be covered in one sitting. Having only one correct answer is arguably more objective as compared to being subjective. They are easy to administer and they're easy to mark. Some drawbacks of having these kinds of tests is that students can prepare for them by memorizing information, cramming, and focusing on surface learning, and then just data dumping on test day. Test anxiety can affect students' performance. So are you measuring what students know and can do, or are you measuring how good are they at managing their anxiety? And arguably they are inauthentic. And one of the resources I have for you in a later slide and in the handout, quote, as is often pointed out, few students end up with jobs where they get paid to fill in bubble sheets. So the inauthenticity aspect of traditional assessments. Alternative assessments are ones where students construct their own responses rather than selecting from the ones that are provided. Some examples of alternative assessments are things like what I have listed here on the screen: projects, presentations, essays, peer evaluation, self-evaluation or peer and self-assessment, field experiences, portfolios, ... Open book exams with higher order multiple choice questions can be considered in the category of alternative and more authentic assessments. An open book exam. In an open book format, students are permitted to access resources during an exam. Maybe it's invigilated or proctored, maybe it's not, maybe it's in person or online, it doesn't matter, but it offers many advantages for cultivating and measuring student learning. It's arguably more authentic because students prepare and they access information, they think and they problem solve in ways that they're going to in their future careers. Open book exams can be summative and rigorous. They can positively impact student emotions by reducing anxiety and therefore increasing confidence. And students do need to prepare. They must adequately prepare because memorization is not going to provide them with the required level of conceptual understanding. And if students do collaborate on the exam, whether it's permitted or not, they really are still learning. I have 3 myths for you, and I'm taking these directly from a colleague of ours at the University of Alberta, Dr. Jacqueline Layton. The QR code that you see there, don't worry about using your phone to get in it. I have the YouTube video for you in the handout, but it's there if you want to take a peek at it at this moment. Dr. Layton presented a topic similar to what we're talking about today at our 2021 Festival of Teaching and Learning. Every May, our Center for Teaching and Learning has a festival celebrating the year that we had in teaching. And this one presentation with Dr. Layton was so impactful that I'm going to share with you verbatim her myths and then her facts that she had that she shared at that. Myth number 1: open book exams are easy. because all you have to do is look up answers in a book, and that is false. If you test for memory, then okay, then they could be easy. But if you test for higher level thinking, such as analysis and evaluation, then no. Second myth, multiple choice questions cannot test higher level thinking. False. Fact, it all depends on how you construct the question. That's why we're here today. If you avoid test wiseness and simple memory recall, then you can target that higher order thinking. Myth, students will cheat. Fact, students can, in principle, cheat on any assessment. More importantly, it's the assessment, is the assessment one that will challenge them and test the objectives? If so, then in principles, even if students are working together, even if you're what you might call cheating, they are learning, and that's the point of the objectives there. So those really resonated with me in our 2021 festival, and I hope they resonate with you as well today. Here is Bloom's taxonomy. I'm sure you've seen this before, where the lower order thinking is near the bottom, the higher order thinking is at the top. Traditional multiple choice questions usually reside in those lower two levels there, the purple and the blue, the remember and the understand. These questions are limited to basic knowledge and common problems, and they are easily located in a textbook or search for online. And so these questions are not suitable for an open book context. Multiple choice questions that are those that target those higher order level of Bloom's, the apply and analyze and evaluate. And I have a little note at the top there. It is a little hard to make a create question in a multiple choice question because students aren't creating anything. They are working with something that's already been created. So we're going to go through an illustrative example. I'm going to take you up the level of Bloom's with a similar example through each of the levels. And then we'll take that and work into some other examples and then try and synthesize it all at the end. Remember, at this level of Bloom, students are just recognizing or recalling concepts. So we'll have a look at this question here. Which of the following lists the stages of the creative process in the correct order? And the answer is A. So in this question, let's say the learning objective was students will be able to list the concepts, list the stages. Students themselves aren't listing, but they're choosing from some options of lists. Easily searched online, easily found in a paper document even, and it could be answered without even studying or thinking too hard. As a person in this world, if you basically know what these TION words mean, you could probably guess that the correct answer is A. So not good for an open book context. Here, let's move up to the next level, understand. At the understand level of Bloom's taxonomy, students might be explaining concepts. So they're using concepts, but they're showing that they do get what these concepts mean. Have a look at this question. And again, our looking at it isn't about the act. We're not trying to learn about the creative process here. It's just seeing the similar question, but a little higher up on Bloom's. Which of the following describes what takes place at the preparation stage? So the verb is describe, and it's just the one stage, the preparation stage. There. Students themselves aren't describing the preparation stage, but they're choosing from a list of descriptions there. Again, And the definition, the ABCD isn't the exact definition, but it's similar enough that it's close to the definition. Students have to know the definition and then find maybe a paraphrased part of it in here. Easily searched online, easy to search in a paper document, pretty easy to answer without studying or thinking too hard. So really, again, not very good for an open book type of exam. We're apply and analyze. We're going to get to evaluate in just a moment, and it's getting longer. I'll speak to the length of this shortly about, these are getting a whole lot longer now. There's a lot more text on screen, so don't read everything here. This is a story about a scientist who has an aha moment, and then students answer that this scientist, Kukule, is going through the illumination stage. So the students have to know the process, the creative process stages, and they have to apply and categorize. They have to put this story into one of the categories of the creative process there. So this is a better question for an open book concept. If you didn't study, you write kind of the second last sentence. Kekule woke up with a start and realized. And if you realize that he woke up with a start and he realized, you might guess that it's the illumination stage, but you can see how this is now getting higher up into Bloom's, applying and analyzing there. I think I missed one. Nope. There we go. I missed a slide. I wanted to take that example and make it just a little bit better. And this is a template that I use often when I'm creating a question that's the apply analyze level. So let's say you had that same story of the scientist, and then you have the question, which is a statement. The above passage illustrates the blank stage because of blank. So there's a 1 and a 2. Which row identifies the word and the reason, so that the stage and the reason that was going on there? I've only given 2 options, incubation and illumination. They both start with the letter I. They both have IOTION at the end. Maybe that's a little bit of test wiseness there, or test strategies, but not all the stages are there. And then I either provide the correct reason or the incorrect reason. So students aren't just guessing the stage, they're also showing that they know the reason why. So the answer in this one would be B. In the above passage illustrates the illumination stage of the creative process because of the correct reason there. So that's a way that I feel that question could be a little bit better and have a little bit less guessing by students. Even more text than the evaluate. So don't even try to read all of this. Let's just try and figure out what is going on here. Essentially, what's going on here is that students are given something, and then they're given, a rubric. The A, B, C, and D, if you have a look at them, excellent, good, mediocre, and unacceptable, students are reading a fictional response that a fictional student would have written, and they are applying the rubric to judge the quality of this statement. So in this case, the light blue, the fictional student's fictional response is an excellent answer. So the real student would answer A, this is an excellent answer. It meets all the criteria. So they are evaluating this work of a fictional student. I know a little convoluted, little hard, but again, going with the evaluate level, these are possible in any discipline. We just happen to be using this creative process example. So this requires more writing and more reading by the instructor, more reading by the student. For the student, if you're going to give students something like this, it would be nice to give them more than one question that goes along with the reading. So it's more worth their while. It's more worth more marks on the exam that they are writing there. If they got to all this reading and it was worth 1 mark out of, I don't know, 80 questions, however many you had, they might just give you that. Here, I don't want that mark. I can't be bothered to do all that reading. You take that mark. So if you have a reading, have at least 2 or 3 or more questions that go along with that one reading. The writing part of it, the writing can get more difficult because these are subject to, they're usually the choose the best answer. And there's a lot of instances where you think you've written a correct answer and then 3 incorrect answers, but you could get a lot of, yeah, but then I was thinking this, but how about this? And then you realize it wasn't clear at all. And then you have to take that question off the test. So when you're writing this, maybe write them with a colleague or have a trusted colleague read it over, try it out, and really make sure that the answer that is the best answer truly is the best answer. All right, so I'm going to go out of my slides and into this document here, my handout for you, because I feel like I have the exact same, my slides were just a bunch of screenshots, and I want to just use this document instead to go through the examples one at a time. So let me make it, that's at 125. Let's see what 150 is. They're a little bit bigger. Okay. Biology 20, not university level, but a nice example. This is a model of the human respiratory system, but there's no lung tissue or bones or anything going on here. This is a glass jar with no bottom on it. There's a flexible rubber sheet at the bottom. There's a hole at the top, and there's 2 balloons. When you pull on the bottom, which is the diaphragm, the balloons will actually inflate because air comes in. So students have to look at this diagram and they have to apply what they know about the human respiratory system to figure out what happens when someone pulls down on the rubber sheet. So the question is, when a biology student pulls downward on the rubber flexible sheet, the 2 balloons fill with air. Why does this happen? And the italicized one is the correct answer. The volume of the jar increases, and so the pressure in the jar is less than the pressure outside. So air moves from an area of high to low pressure along the concentration gradient. And that's why the balloons fill with air. So there's no question. This is not a question of what is a concentration gradient or what's lungs made of. It's not anything like that. It is an application question. We could take this into even further. So a student pulls down on the model of the diaphragm, the flexible rubber sheet, and the balloons don't inflate. Well, how does this relate to maybe a health concern? And that might be the case of what happens in a collapsed lung. So it could be, well, what was supposed to happen didn't happen, and a little bit of problem solving. Why doesn't this happen? Whether you want biology or not, I have a few biology here. The idea that you have a diagram, a model, a picture, and something happens and you ask what's going on in that. That's the underlying concept on that one. How about this one? It's a graph. Students interpret the graph. What is the most accurate interpretation? The x-axis is time. The y-axis is respiration rates of germinating pea plants. The pea plants in the warmer temperature had a higher respiration rate. They used more oxygen. The 10-degree one still had some respiration, but just not as much. Respiration rate is positively affected by temperature. And the other ones are not correct there. Higher order questions are the norm in anything to do with laboratory science. In science, you gather and analyze information. So lots of opportunities in sciences for this kind of thing. And I wanted to put this one more example in because this is an example of this correct answer because of the correct reason, correct answer because of the incorrect reason, the green one that I showed you a couple of slides ago. This is talking about the brain's ability to sort through information and why you don't feel your clothes on your skin 24/7. Why you have nerve endings, you have sensory receptors on your skin, and they are detecting the presence of your clothes, but they're not bombarding your brain isn't reacting to all of this sensory information. It's called sensory adaptation because the brain is able to ignore redundant, unimportant information. So students need to know between the concept of sensory adaptation and accommodation. Accommodation actually has to do with the eyes, so it's not even related here. But they also have to know the correct reason. So the answer isn't B because the reason after the word because is not the correct reason. So here's where in the handout I've given you this template that could be helpful for you in writing some of these questions. This one is from a microbiology class. Thank you to my friends in microbiology that provided me with this example. This would be something that the students aren't seeing for the first time. This is an example, science or not, where you have a scholarly source that you used in class somehow, a reading that you discussed in class, whatever it might be. You take an excerpt from that reading, and the question is, what is going on here? So this wouldn't be the first time students are seeing this. Presumably they've read the paper, they've discussed the paper in class, and now they have to choose the correct statement about what's going on and the correct explanation as to why. One more example from microbiology is a calculation question, and any calculation question is naturally higher order, especially if the distractors represent possible errors in calculation. And this one in particular has some non-required information. So there's a number that's provided that students, they have to know the formula, they have to understand the concept, and they also have to be able to ignore the unnecessary information that is provided. And that's something you could bring into another discipline as well. And I have one more example of idea in this box in your handout. What if you gave students the steps to complete in a lab? Step 1, do this, the methodology. Step 2, do this. Step 3, do this. Would these steps lead to the desired outcome? Why or why not? Back to Dr. Layton's Ed Psychology course for you. This is, she let me have a peek into one of her e-class, one of her LMS sites, and I grabbed this one out of it. This is again, the concept doesn't matter, the class, nothing of that matters. It's what's going on here. She's citing a paper that was discussed in class. This could even be an actual, quotation marks, a whole chunk of something that was discussed in a paper. And then the question is, what did the author mean by this? In this one, Bronfenbrenner's 1979 bioecological model. We discussed it in class. Is the answer to my question yes or no? Yes, because, no, because, yes, because. And the answer is no, because. And so students would know the answer is no because they attended class, or maybe it wasn't attending class, maybe it was part of a discussion forum, part of a pre-recorded video, whatever the situation is or was, and the answer comes from that. So this is an example of maybe you don't write your entire exam ahead of time. Maybe you wait until the few classes before to have these questions like, oh, in class we discussed this. What did we decide was the best solution, or whatever that might be? And again, I have the source to Dr. Layton's video. So here's, if we click on this link, it'll take you to our YouTube of that. Other higher order tasks. So I know I've been pretty science focused. I am a science person, so happy to bring in a bit of ed psych from Dr. Layton, but mostly science examples. I hope you can see the applicability of them to other disciplines. But here's a list for you. You can interpret the meaning of an article or excerpt. You can apply previously acquired information to a new situation. Analyze any kind of text, poetry, short stories, whatever the text might be, and look for patterns and relationships. Predict the effect of something that is known on a new situation. Evaluate the steps of a plan toward accomplishing a goal, and evaluate the validity of an argument there. So I feel like I've stopped a bit short. I've given you some underlying concepts and examples, but what about some kind of tangible to do? What about some tips and tricks, some steps, considerations, helpful hints, concerns? We are ed developers in this room, we are instructors in this room, and we're going to be building these kinds of questions for our students. We have 104 of us here today. So I've created 3 Jamboards. I'll put the links in shortly.
If you're to the EDNA website for upcoming lunches that and where you can register here as well. Thank you for your time. It was great to see you. Maybe as a closing, if you will kindly put in the chat what institutions you are representing, so we can see all of the places across Alberta that are scrolling by. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful Wednesday.